now we're recording something for the people to listen to on their summer vacations or whatever they're doing.
That's
It's
good.
still July.
It
It's
sure
not
is.
it's not time for us to think about work yet. August is coming, then we can think about working. And then September happens and we actually do have to work.
Yeah, true that. Well, ledge days and stuff, I think will change. Kind of that mentality there going through elections will be pretty insane. What let's not leave the data center thing because it's on my mind. You started getting me heated and fired up. So
Okay, so here's this is I'll start with this. I'll say my position is, and this is I will come out and say this: bad public policy. This is terrible public policy I'm about to propose. However, I think it gets us out of the political quagmire, not just the right, by the way. I think this covers because data centers, I saw a tweet this morning that said if you put a gun-toting cowboy and a they them with a septum piercing in the same room, the only thing they agree on is banning data centers, that they hate data centers. Okay, so
so
that
true.
means that and I didn't write that, I just want to make that clear, that's just what I read. And the political impact of data centers is massive. Okay, there were local races that got completely flipped upside down where incumbents lost because they were the pro data center candidate or had just approved a data center. City councils are scared out of their minds. They're voting down projects left and right. Hillsborough just did a 120-day ban on them. Right, people are losing their minds on this stuff. So how do you stop it? Well, unfortunately, I think you do a 1-year moratorium on data centers. It's terrible because we're going to lose, as you're going to point out, we're going to lose a ton of economic development. And but I also don't know how else you tamp down the hysteria for any other kind of economic development that you want to do. Because as soon as somebody starts getting land ready for an industrial purpose, everyone's going to go, oh, it could be a data center. It's under an NDA. There's no way to know. Stop it. And so there just won't be any economic development. And I don't see how that's successful. But I
No.
don't have a better option, and I wish there was a better option.
Well, you're right. That's horrible public policy. Um,
Terrible. It's really bad.
I
I want to
don't.
make that clear. I know it. It's very bad.
I mean, anytime you put a when you put a moratorium on something, right? Whether it's this or offshore wind energy or whatever, you're usually doing it for the sole purpose of politics. You're not doing it for the purpose
Yeah.
of what's in the best interest for, the state moving forward, what's in the best interest for this, that, and the other thing. So taking data centers, you know, I'm very intimately engaged in data centers. I know a lot of what's going on with data centers. And right now, the biggest problem with data centers is the fact that it's just a bunch of lies. And
Right.
you're dealing with this like complete layer of misinformation driven by a hard left narrative first. And now it's caught on to the ire, like you said, like most people, right? I was looking at some polling that
Yeah.
does not look very good, for data centers, but given the right information, people do come back around to data centers because jobs matter,
Mm-hmm.
economic development matter. And so the water stuff is insane. Do you know it takes more water to wash solar panels than it does to run a data center? Did you know how much water we use on solar? You know how much water we use on solar fields to wash the top of those stupid fucking panels over using data centers? Like we use massive amounts of water for your clean energy crap out there to wash the top of solar panels, which are now, especially out in Eastern Oregon, a bunch of ash and soot sitting on top of them. And you have to constantly wash those solar
Yeah.
panels. You know how much water it takes to wash one almond? One almond. How much water it takes to water a
Almonds.
field, a
I saw
golf
that.
course? A data center uses about as much water as a hotel. But the
Yeah. And I think
misinformation
that's,
is so intense, and the idea that it's using millions of gallons, like, well, we use millions of gallons of water for everything. Like I
yeah.
don't know. Water is obviously an important part of our infrastructure for whatever it is that you're doing. you know, and I think you just to like ban it because you want to make up noise stuff, you want to make up water stuff that just isn't true. You know, I mean, you should ban golf courses before you ban data centers if your goal is to keep water. So
Now, to be
you
clear,
know,
there are some people who think we should ban golf courses, and those people are wrong. And I think I'm wrong. But the other thing is like, how do you get to a space where you actually get to present that data and do the pushing back?
you can use my laptop.
And that's the only way that I think like you get your space to make your argument, because otherwise the crazy arguments are going to win the battle for a long time. And I think if you freeze it, it might give you a chance to go, all right, here's our public, we're going to do all around the state. The governor has a task force on data centers and stuff, but I don't think in the environment that we're in, whatever it produces is going to be very helpful. It's got to be, because it can't look like the politicians design the process to get their desired outcome. That's just going to add to the hysteria. They're going to say, oh, look, see, they went out and they hired their scientists to prove it's not killing us. And it's just like the chemtrails. They've been lying to us for years about the chemtrails. And so you have to figure out a way. Oh my word, we get so many cloud seeding emails. It's crazy. I have a hard time not running back and just telling people they're insane, but I don't. I agree. And maybe
here's my thought. And I'm okay with where you've gone. Like you do make a valid point that maybe pausing to allow for the real information, to allow for debate to happen, like real debate needs to happen about it. Like real information needs to come out. And obviously we got a long session coming up to where hopefully that'll come out, but you're just going to have some people that have gotten to office by just being on the anti-data center thing. And they're just going to, like you said, with every land use decision, they're just going to bring up data center. Janine Salma's bill literally specifically stated no data centers, and yet she was still thrown out of office.
And it's still.
So, but here's the question that I think we're not asking the right questions, and this is what I want to ask people that are against data centers, and I think they're also the same people that are against everything, bananas. So I think they're against everything, and so I would say, okay, what business, what industry would you like to recruit to Oregon? Can you give me one industry in which you wouldn't oppose that we could recruit to Oregon that's going to create jobs, economic development, and pay the taxes that go for all the social bullshit that you want to pay for? So I would ask, what's that industry?
I suspect the answer you get is there's no answer. It's cricket.
Why isn't Drazen that? I want to ask Drazen that question. I want to ask Kotek that question. You tell me you want to be the chief prosperity officer. What's the industry you're going after? Nobody's asking the right question, Reagan. That's the part that drives me crazy. Ask the right question. You won't let us log. You barely let us farm. You don't want us to have cows because you don't like CAFOs and all the other stuff that go in there. You don't like data centers. You don't like Intel because Intel needs data centers. You can't do that. You don't like Nike and Columbia can't do anything because they're going to just send their manufacturing overseas because of the policies you put into place. That's not going to allow anybody to manufacture in the United States of America. So what industry is it? I don't know. I'm racking my head when people say, oh, we want to do industry. I'm like, what industry? What? Mm-hmm. You don't let LNG come in here. You don't want mining. You don't want us doing any fracking. You don't want to do. There's nothing that you're going to allow that's going to create economic development activity on any scale that pays for the stuff that you want as a state government. I don't know the answer.
Totally.
That's the problem that I'm just struggling with as an individual, going, okay, what industry is it? Like, I don't know. You tell me. Oil, natural gas.
It's also not. It's not hospitality either, because they're going to allow Mount Bachelor and all these other places to close because they can't cover their liability. You already have high cost of employing people because we have a very high minimum wage, and the cost of having employees also, the not direct wage costs, but all the other costs that go into having are higher in Oregon than in a lot of other states. So they're just, I totally agree with you, Brian. I think the answer is we're going to talk about small businesses. We're going to talk about farming and ag. We're going to talk about tourism. We're going to talk, but we're not going to do the things necessary to make us attractive to any of those industries. I very insightful, Brian. Honestly, I think you're absolutely right about that. And here's the thing too. This is why I think the moratorium does kind of work, is because then you can't just run on being anti-data centers because there's no data centers for a year, or right? So then I think it takes away the issue from the candidate that's running on data centers only and exposes them for being weak candidates that are trying to capitalize on a one-time issue. I think that's the other side, political-ish benefit, I think, from the moratorium is if you do it, you basically say, now you as the opponent, if you're the incumbent or being challenged by a data center candidate, you go, okay, we have a year of no data centers. What do you want? 2 years? You want 10 years? It sort of gives you that space to poke back at the candidate and find out that they're really a house of cards. That's my theory anyway. In practice, it may not work. In practice, it may devastate us economically. In practice, it may make us, we might be the 51st worst state. We're so bad that 50th isn't even, there's nobody in 50th and we're 51st. I mean,
we go worse than like Guam.
Possible.
We can go below Guam and we can be like almost like a territory.
Yeah. People are going to start labeling me the anti-prosperity officer. It's really bad. I could totally be wrong. And luckily I don't get to make the policy in this state. I don't do that. So people can debate, and it'll be interesting to see what the governor's candidates do, transitioning us more into this governor, because you were brought up the governor's race. Yeah. It's going to be interesting to see what they do with data centers. What other issues do they make salient? We're less than 100 days now from the election. That's why Hillsborough banning data centers for 120 days was so funny to me, because it's just like, we just got to get past the election. We just have to get past the election, right? So anyway, I sort of am of the opinion that whichever candidate between Drazen and Kotek comes out first against data centers wins the undecided vote. Now, maybe that's not enough to flip the whole election, but if you've got a large undecided vote and they're making a decision based on a key issue that everybody's talking about, I don't see why that wouldn't be data centers.
I think that they'll both come out against data centers because it'd be politically stupid for either of them to be like, yeah, I'm all for data centers, right? I mean, like, they're not gonna. I think what Drazen will do is probably couch it in a little bit more of, rural communities, need jobs, and these things create jobs, and there's good union paying jobs, and she'll kind of like preface it, but it's important to take a pause so we understand the impacts. She'll say some shit like that, right? I could probably write it in 2 minutes what her statement is. And then Kotek will take a little bit of a harder line because she needs to not lose her base, right? And then she'll just say, I think taking a moratorium approach or a pause is important so we understand the impacts of everything as stuff across the country. But in her mind, they're all kind of, I think they're both angling for, is there anybody at play here that would give money to their campaigns? I think everything goes back to money, Reagan. That's my theory in politics. But because, money shapes things. So is Amazon going to come in and help like shape public policy for data centers? Maybe. I mean, are they going to give money? They traditionally haven't. That's the weirdest thing about the data center thing. If you look at it like kind of nationally, like the big seven that are in the data center world, like they don't, until the Trump election, really, you never saw Zuckerberg involved in a campaign. Like, you just didn't, right? Like the tech world just traditionally always bent it a little left because of their employee base was always bent a little left. And then, but what they found is that the freedom of speech stuff, the not going after them for, the newspaper bill that was brought up last time, like, holding hostage Google for $100 million to pay left-wing reporters to write bad stories about Republicans. So I just think that that group is moving a little right of center. but they're still not actively engaged in politics. Like they just haven't been. And then the data center stuff, like there was even an article that Oregon Capital Chronicle pushed out, like, oh no, there's a nonprofit C4 putting out a coordinated information on data centers is out there. And it's like, well, what do you expect them to do? Sit around and do nothing? Like, why wouldn't they coordinate a campaign to start telling people what they believe is the truth, through their lens? And I just think that this won't really affect the governor's races, kind of my theory. It might affect some local races where data centers are or have been impacting, like House District 52,
right,
something like that, right? Where the Dows and Google and because you got Hank, who's total anti-data center, and you got Scott Hagee, who would approve the data centers as a county commissioner. So that's where this will play out. I think the governors, both the candidates, will be able to craft their message enough to keep the base. But you're right. Where does that 4% fall? Like, I don't know if they're
the governor has the Oregon Data Center Advisory Committee. She formed this in January, I think. And their final meetings, they have 3 more. They have additional considerations and deliberations, which is the July 31st meeting, August 4th committee discussion and deliberation of the draft report. I think that August 4th meeting is basically going to contain their recommendations, the draft version, right? We'll see if it leaks. Prosperity Council jokes. And then they have a final public listening session like 2 months after that, September 26th. So the draft report on August 4th, I think whatever's in there, I think Kotek for the most part is just going to adopt that because she's very much make a decision based on the highest and best information. She put this group together, so she doesn't take the recommendations. It's also weird. So that I think you'll see Kotek's opinion will be in the August 4th draft report because certainly some of those folks on that commission are going to go back to her and say, here's what we're thinking. And she's going to go, yeah, you're thinking great. Or I think you think something different. And they go, yes, Madam Governor, we think something different. And they'll change, right? They'll have whatever. And so that'll be what she bases her opinion off of. She'll say the experts decided, and this is what I agree. So Drazen has a small window right now to beat her to the punch on whatever it is. So and I think being first, you get maybe a week and a half news cycle out of that, and then you can use it the rest of the campaign. So if data centers matter, the window is closing. But I think there's the opportunity for her to come out and just say, look, I think a 1-year ban is great.
Did you look at who's on that council though?
Governor, and that'll be an executive. I'm reading it there. So first of all,
they're a bunch of climate change wackadoodles.
So Northwest Power and Conservation Council,
which is that's a climate change. That's just a climate. That's a climate change person. She was the energy person for Kitshopper and Kate Brown. Like how? I mean,
yeah. And then you have Dan Doran, the chair of the Umatilla County Commission. You got two professors from U of O and University of Portland.
Yeah, that's what we need.
Oregon Business for Climate, which is an anti-business group. Kid you not.
Yeah.
And then Gene Wilson from Sandbrook Capital is probably the only voice of reason for hey guys, we're going to destroy all investment in the state of Oregon if we do crazy stuff. So I feel bad for her. But yeah, it's interesting because I guess it makes sense that she would stack it with environmentalist people. I mean, she is still, at the end of the day, pro-environmentalist. Despite the fact that Lane County Land Watch says she is the greatest and number one threat to land use in Oregon. By the way, Land Watch.
That
County
Gene Wilson lady,
Governor Kotek, which I found hilarious.
That Gene Wilson lady's nothing but a solar energy only first crazy ass green energy thing where I bet they meant she probably works for a hedge fund and makes tons of money off of getting federal tax breaks to put up fucking solar panels. So, what it's going to come
so
in,
she might not even be a voice.
No, Dan is the only one that's even worth a shit on that entire panel. Just because he's at least in Umatilla County dealt with data centers, right? So, I mean, that's the only one that comes with any sort of actual experience in knowing what the data centers are doing on the ground. The rest of those people, especially a professor from Portland State and U of O, are you kidding me? Like they let Charlie Conrad
the U of O
be a professor.
Was the U of O professor not smart enough? They had to like add a second one. That's the weird part to me. Is it's like, why more than one professor? Do one professor. Anyway, I didn't put the council together. I didn't put the advisory committee together. It's not a council. That's different, which is different than a task force, which is also different than a work group. All right.
I know. So, yeah, I know. I digress. I'm with you. I get caught in the weeds a little bit on this stuff, but I just think the argument really comes down to, what does Oregon's future look like economically? What are the companies that you want? You've ran Dutch Brothers out of town. You've run all of these, we see company after company leaving Oregon. And I just go back to, fine, if you don't want data centers here, I think there's plenty of, America's a big country. And if we don't want to have data centers in Oregon, if that's a choice that we're making as a state, then, so be it. Like, that's fine. I know what data centers have done for my community in Prineville, and I know the value of those data centers to my community, and I'll hold that value. And I'm more than happy to share that value, which I have clearly on this podcast and, in other areas. But that is also only my experience with Facebook and Apple. So there could be other data centers that are horrible. So I don't know. The hyperscalers are a little interesting to me. Like, now it's become a money grab. When you start getting hyperscalers, you get the hedge funds, you get billionaires in there that are literally just building them and renting them to the companies. I like having real companies over like having hyperscalers where they're just building these data centers and leasing them to the tech companies. I think the tech companies, if they're here locally, I think they have more skin in the game versus like, oh, we're just a leaseholder. So I think there's some value to that. I would look at that. And if I don't see that sort of stuff coming out of this report with these guys, then I'll probably discount the whole report, because if you're not going to break it down, a little bit more and talk about, redundancy, not being on the grid, like things like that is what needs to happen, within these data centers to make them work. And ultimately, like some friends have told me, I mean, Elon Musk will probably solve the whole problem and put data centers in space. So, I hope so, because that would be awesome. Run by robots, which would be super cool,
It is a great idea. You know what isn't a great idea, Brian? Creating more House committees. We have so many already, and yet now we have more. So this is something that kind of flew under the radar. I didn't even see Dirk or any of the others kind of write about it, but I think it's actually huge in terms of what's going on. So House Democrats, they're a bit of a struggle bus. Some people won't even get on the bus. Some people won't be on the bus with other people. It's a problem. They apparently they hired a mediator. They have a mediation session, which they will not talk about to the press. They have to talk about the fact that they paid for it, but they're not talking about what happened at it. So we don't know how it went. Maybe that will leak at some point. But the day before, I think it was, or the week before, right? The week before it was scheduled to happen, the speaker made some changes on committees. Now, some of these make a lot of sense. Okay, she discharged Ken Helm as the co-chair of Ag, Land Use, Natural Resources, and Water, and appointed Sarah Finger McDonald. So Helm not coming back, Finger McDonald expected to win re-election in a safe seat. And so she's making it clear who's the next up to run stuff through the following. Right? So Sarah Finger McDonald would be expected to hold that chairmanship. So if you're working on those issues, you just start working with her now in the interim. Smart move. Lively, also retiring. They appointed Gamba chair of Climate, Energy, and Environment Committee. Holy smokes, you guys. That committee is going to produce a lot of garbage legislatively. Representative Gamba is going to run out some stuff, and it's going to suck. And a lot of it's going to die in Ways and Means, unfortunately, instead of dying in committee. where Lively, held it down, and some of these other folks have held it down. So that'll be interesting to watch. But whoa. And then there's three new committees. Now, early childhood and human services used to be one committee chaired by Hartman. It's now split into two. Early childhood is chaired by Representative Jules Walters. Human services chaired by Representative Travis Nelson. It'll be interesting to see what these guys pick up, how often they meet. Do they even have enough bills, right? What's the workload look like? And then higher education, which is basically, I think they were doing higher ed in the regular House Education Committee, and they've just broken it off now. And Representative Fragola is the chair of that. So you've got these new chairmanships, right? They took one chairmanship or two chairmanships and turned it into four chairmanships. So, and I think, as you see with the climate committee moving hard left, ag, I wouldn't necessarily say it's moving left, although I think it's possible it does. And I think one of the interesting things I'm working on is I got to pull some data, but I think basically ag did almost no land use bills last time. They didn't have time to do them. There's too much ag and natural resource and water issues. So there's a really good case now that Rep. Helm, who was a land use attorney, is no longer chair of that committee, that land use needs to go where it is in the Senate, which is the housing committee. So hopefully we see that reorganization happen after the election. But I think if you do that, you actually balance the workloads of the two committees evenly in terms of how many bills they got last session. So I think that would be another change that would be really helpful here. But more committees. We have got a fully open Capitol now, so there's more committee rooms, right? Got to have more committees to fill the more committee rooms.
Fill the space.
But now you've got chairs: Nelson, Fragola, Walters, Gamba. I mean, that's more lefty than we've been here in some of these areas. So I think.
Do you think
the question becomes,
was the speaker buying off some votes there?
I do have a question about if the struggle session they were planning to have was related to the speakership and the performance, and if these new chairmanships help soften or make it so that everybody's happier. I don't know. The question, I don't really know, because it's not like Fahey is a big moderate. Nobody's out there saying that she's a right-wing Democrat, that she's John Fetterman, that she absolutely not. No one thinks that. If anything, what happens is we have to, after Kotek and Courtney, who were very much in control of their chambers, very much telling chairs, we can't have this bill, you're going to kill it, that kind of stuff. You have these much weaker presiding officers. And so who they pick as chairs matters even more now. And so when they pick more lefty folks, it changes what comes out of the building, and it changes what comes out of those committees. So, and then what happens is Ways and Means has to be the voice of reason, unless they can find a way to not spend any money when they're passing these bills. So you're seeing more of this stuff that used to die in committee now die in Ways and Means, and that's just purely due to budget constraints. Because I think even the co-chairs would tell you, well, if we had the money, yeah, I'd totally support it. Now, whether that's true or not, no way to know. But that's the line they go with, I would guess, 99% of the time.
Yeah.
So
thank God
I do think it's related.
Budgets.
I think these things happen close together.
You're right.
You're
right. I think it's going to be, well, and the Senate had to do the same too. They expanded the committees last cycle as well. And I think it's because one, you have increasing number, to your point, of personalities that are, requiring a gavel. And if they don't get there, then what did Gamma call people? Petulant children? I think you get him himself, I don't think had a gavel before this one. So I think, he's been there a couple terms now. So he's probably saying, listen, I get to have a gavel. And if I don't get a gavel, then I'm just going to get pissed and more pissed. And then eventually what happens is they get pissed at the one person they can, and that's the person in charge. So the speaker has to deal with the petulant children of her caucus constantly. I don't care if you're a minority leader or majority leader, you're constantly dealing with the emotions of the elected officials that you're there to lead, and it's a constant challenge. I just wonder, you and I aren't in the Democrat caucus, so I would be curious to see, like, is that gotten louder?
Speak for yourself, Brian. No, I'm just kidding. I'm still a Republican.
Yeah, I just think we have to kind of. I think you're probably going down the right path on that. These things kind of all work together, but the reality, there has been some change. I mean, losing a couple of long-term members on the House D side that were, I wouldn't go so far to call Ken Helm a moderate, but pragmatic, respectful, understands the right positioning, versus, and clearly no desire to climb the political ladder. And I think that's also what makes the difference in, I believe, a good lawmaker and a bad lawmaker is what their political aspirations are. Because if you don't care about climbing the political ladder, you tend to be a better lawmaker. And then making meaningful change in the law that makes the lives better of people. Otherwise, you're just looking for headlines. So,
well, and it consumes your time. Climbing the ladder consumes the time that you would spend lawmaking, basically.
Yeah. So, yeah, interesting stuff. I think, regardless of all those, the climate change stuff, I wonder what, like the wildfire stuff that's kind of happening now, like, does that go into, because I've seen already the BS, staffers for Wyden and Merkley putting out the crap, this climate crisis and this and that. And I mean, there's so much wrong with wildfire. I think we'll have to save that when we can have Representative Vicky Bruce-Iverson on, and she can talk about the real ins and outs of it, because she's been deep in it every single day with the wildfires that's happening, and really understanding not only the money side. I mean, Senator McClain's been really good as well, I got to say, about talking about the money side of the equation, like what it's costing us and stuff. And he has a good understanding of that. So I think that's neither here nor there. I think there's some issues with the money side, but I think it's really the policy that we have to look at, that what policies have gotten us here. What things happen? What does the landscape look like? So you're not only getting into a climate side, you're getting into management, but you're also, the landscape has changed too. And it's not fair for us as Republicans to just lambast, well, if we were still logging, there wouldn't be wildfire. That's about as dumb statement as saying this is climate change. Like, it's really like, to my friends on the right, that's just a dumb statement. You can't make
it's a massive oversimplification, I think.
Yeah.
I think there's a contributing factor, obviously, of not logging, but it's also it's hard for anyone to believe that there's a silver bullet to this. There is not.
No, it's just like I was talking with Senator Nash for a while. We were talking about how back in the day you would run your cattle and you would deep graze, fields and others, and pockets of grazing you would go after. And then when the cattle were done, you would send the sheep in because they'll eat everything else, right? Like, you send the cattle first, and then the cattle get bored of eating the crappy weeds, and then you send the sheep in and they'll eat the rest of the weeds down. And there was a lot of that management of not the forest, but really like all of that underbrush, all of that sort of stuff that happened dramatically across not only just private ground and federal ground, but state ground, everywhere you could think of. There was a lot of that. And it doesn't make sense for cattle ranchers and sheep herders. We used to have bands and bands of sheep in Eastern Oregon, and we don't have that much sheep anymore. Vicky's grandpa used to run, or our dad used to say, or grandpa used to always run around and say, we have the cattle to be respectful. We have the sheep to make money. So that was, it was a thing, right? There's all these moving parts that go into wildfire. And then also the other side of it is there's no real fire breaks anymore. And that's what Senator Nash and I were talking about. Like, you don't really have, we shut down roads. We we just don't use the land. And this is from, this isn't a federal thing or even private, guys. Like we don't have natural fire breaks. And then you couple that with juniper trees that have gone, haywire over the last 30 or 40 years. I mean, landscapes that used to just be grasses and sagebrush are now littered with juniper trees, and we have no fire breaks with those juniper trees. So if you look at, take a city, or a town, and that's burning up right now. Take Madras, good example. So you have the city of Madras, and then beyond the city of Madras, you have, pretty much all your farmers, right? They live outside the city, and you have farmland and all that sort of stuff. And then you have the hill. Then you start getting into the hills. Well, those hills used to be kind of sagebrush and, crappy weeds and stuff like that. Well, now they're littered with juniper trees as they work their way down the mountain before you ever got to the forest, the Ocho National Forest, where your real lumber is, right? Where your loggers would be, because loggers don't log juniper trees. So what happens is, if you get a wildfire strike on a juniper tree in that in-between land, the juniper trees, the limbs go straight to the ground. Pine trees, they don't start until you're 20, 30 feet in the air. So a fire can brush through a pine forest and you wouldn't even notice it was there. But the juniper trees blow up like, fireworks on the 4th of July, because that undergrass hasn't been mowed down, but their limbs go to the freaking ground. And they just burn hot and fast, and they throw embers for miles. And so the convoluting of all those sort of things just make it impossible to cut a fire line around something and create an anchor spot. Like, what we need is almost like those, when you look at our landscape and you see the electricity wires, like the high 510 volt things that go, and they cut these wide swaths like right through the landscape to make sure if those electric wires aren't swinging back and forth, they don't hit a tree limb or something like that. We kind of need stuff like that around these communities, where we just have these huge swath fire breaks that are, until we can get our hands on the other things. It's like you said with the moratorium with data centers. It's almost like, hey, the first thing we could do this winter is let's go around Sisters and just create a 200-foot fire line, and just say, if there's a fire over the course of the next couple of years while we figure out how to manage all of this stuff, at least we know we have a fire break, right? Like, we can stop a fire that's going to threaten all those homes and everything in that area. I don't know, something like that kind of needs to happen. There's got to be a lot of conversation about that. We can get into the weeds on, and we'll do that with Vicky at some point, talking about how we're managing these fires. But the reality is 1.5 million acres burned as of today is already gonna, and we're not even August 1st yet. It's gonna put us as the record for wildfires, but that also means it's gonna be the record for what it's costing. And if an ounce of prevention if that's not worth a pound of flesh, then I don't know what the hell to tell anybody. So we got to spend a little bit more on prevention, and we'd save ourselves so much money in fighting these damn things. That's my
rule. I'm submitting a moratorium on junipers. I'm doing it. I'm moratorium on junipers. I'm sending it to LC right now. They're gonna laugh.
Hit send. I don't know how you tell the juniper trees that they have a moratorium, but we have a process
in the state of Oregon that the junipers will not grow.
Yeah, we have a process in place, like with the soil and water conservation districts, which are all throughout the state. And, there's been some grant money that's gone towards, removing juniper trees, but it's mostly been in these watersheds. And we're trying to create more water in those watersheds, which makes a lot of sense. But, when you only give $1 million to a Crook County, for instance, they'll eat that up in like 4 projects, because the problem with watersheds is it takes a lot of work, because that's manual effort. I mean, my boys and I, we were out there cutting junipers yesterday, and we're 3 hours in, I'm about ready to fall over dead, from 3 hours of chainsawing juniper trees. Right. So, because it's steep and hilly and rocky, and so you can't get machinery in there. And so but you get on the flatlands, you get on some of those, moderate kind of, flatlands that are just riddled with juniper trees. Man, we can put those guys that have those log trucks. I mean, they can whack out acres of juniper trees in no time, and then we could have maybe biomass plants that process that stuff that creates energy. And I know the Democrats hate combustion, but it's got to be better than data centers. So maybe that's the industry. Well, maybe that's our industry, Reagan, is removing juniper trees. But I guess we got to pay people to do it. So I don't know how that helps.
We can put the prisoners on it, right? The felons, the adults. What do they call them? Adults in custody.
Yeah, that is just isn't that great?
Remove 1,000 juniper trees and remove a year off your sentence. I guess I don't know.
I love it when they make that statement because I think I tweeted that. It was kind of funny because I was like, no, they're actually criminals convicted by their peers to go to prison for a crime they were convicted of. So they're not adults in custody. And I was laughing with Senator Anderson. We're actually going to put it in a legislative draft on this one. And I said, what's adults in custody is being on jury duty. That is adults in custody. Because you're forced to be there. They pay you $10 a day, but they will give you mileage if you'd like to take it. And then you feel like an asshole if you take the mileage reimbursement to go down there. So you know what we're going to do? We're going to put in an LC that if you're on jury duty, you get paid per diem exactly what all of the boards and commissions get to volunteer their time across the state. I think it should be the same pay. And we'll pay for it by taking the money out of Measure 110.
Nice.
Yeah.
Love it.
So
solid
preview. LC draft preview. Oh, we should do an episode on LC draft previews at some point. That'd be good. We could have some people come in and talk about LC drafts. We'll save that for November, I guess.
I think that's a great idea. Yeah, there should be some good stuff coming. And then after the election, everyone goes, oh, here's what I really actually wanted to do. And that's why they set the deadline before.
Well, we'll have to only bring in safe Republican seats and safe D seats.
Right. Yeah, exactly. What's your best bill? What's your worst bill? What's the bill you know is bad that you're still introducing anyway?
Ooh, that would be a great question. What's the bill the other side is going to hate?
Yeah. I think it should be fun. All right. Well, it was good to catch up with you, Brian. We'll see if there's any other news, and we can have an emergency episode or something, and then get back to it as we get closer to the election. But right now, it's dead out there. By the way, do want to shout out to everybody who's working on campaigns. Obviously, you guys know the legislature isn't really working, but I'm sure the campaign folks are working. 100 days left. You start to freak out a little. You start to go, oh, snap. I really need to kick it into high gear. So good luck, everybody working the campaigns.
Awesome. Yeah, get to work. Go make some phone calls, knock doors, raise money. Nothing else to do in the summer.
And stop answering your Facebook comments. It's not winning you any voters.
See you, buddy.
See ya.